Hello friends, welcome back to my channel. My name is Kate and I have been tagged by my dearest darling friend Kieran to discuss 5 books that would change your life forever. So let's talk about it. Trying a different filming location for the bookish talks as opposed to like the university talks, which I usually take from my desk. We are in my living room, sitting room, library, and we're going to talk about 5 books that I think will change your life. I think if you have watched my channel for a while, you'll recognize some of these books already, but it's been quite interesting pulling these books. I think I have really tried to choose more contemporary reads rather than sort of the classical reads. And by no means are these my favorite books of all time. I have done that video before, but maybe it's time for a revisit because I think some of these books would be in my favorites of all time video. Anyway, let's get right into it. So starting off really strong, this is Tomb of Sand by Gitanjali Shree. This is one of the best books I think I have ever read in my entire life. Your protagonist is an elderly lady, I think she's 80-year-old woman who slips into a deep depression at the death of her husband and then resurfaces to gain a new lease on life, to fly in the face of convention, confuses her bohemian daughter who is used to thinking of herself as the more modern of the two. This book is absolutely fantastic. As you can see, it is quite a chunky read, but I think this book is a true testament to how amazing translated works can be. Actually, this is a book that's a testament to a number of things, but the first thing is that it shows how fantastic translation can be. The translator, who is Daisy Rockwell, puts a translator's note in the back of this, I think in the back or the front of this book, where she talks about how Shree writes in such a particular manner that she tried to encapsulate more the atmosphere of what she was writing rather than just translating word for word. And I think Rockwell's done a fantastic job of integrating that sense of atmosphere in this book. This book touches on some very difficult history between India and Pakistan during the time of partition, and explores those sort of differentials in a really, really unique way with a very unique protagonist. I love the idea that our protagonist is not sort of your stock standard young modern person, but actually is an elderly woman who has lived her life in really difficult times, and at the death of her husband kind of has this reawakening or the second burst of life where she goes back into her history and into her life and revisits it and relooks at it. And I think more than anything that this book it continually sits with me. I think about this book a lot, and I think the impact of history, actually that's probably a theme of the books that I've picked up, is that the impact of history cross-generational is so profound, but also the effects of almost bizarre politics on the lives of ordinary people is really encapsulated quite brilliantly in this book. And more than anything, it is an example of exquisite prose and writing. The way that this book is written, the atmosphere that the words create for you is just insane. And there's even just there's a chapter in here that's just one sentence. One sentence. That's it. That's the chapter. I mean, that is so profound. Just that sense of finality around someone's interactions being a single sentence in a chapter. I just think that it's so clever, it's so brilliant, it's so profound. And I think what you will get out of reading this book is a sense of emotional impact and empathy. Continuing on with intergenerational trauma or history, I just read this. I finished it not even a couple of weeks ago, maybe 2 or 3 weeks ago. This is Homegoing, and this was on my 2024 TBR list, which I'm not doing very well at, but that's a discussion maybe for later on. But this book, Homegoing, starts off with two sisters who end up with two very, very different destinies. One is captured and becomes a slave, and the second is a slaver's wife. And it's so fascinating to see the development or the generational impact of such a traumatic time in so many people's history. And each chapter is a new generation. And so I find that really, really exciting. This book actually reads really quickly and really easily. Obviously, there's some very, very traumatic things that happen to the characters in this book, and I would highly recommend you just double check your trigger warnings before you dive into this book. But it's very manageable, very readable. But I think the brilliance of this book is its ending. And as you know from me, I don't like the endings of books. I don't feel like books do endings justice more often than not. But this ending left me feeling complete, satisfied, that the circle that had been drawn throughout this entire book was finally coming together, and it came together in a really, really beautiful and healing manner. And so even though this book is so instructive on the ways of people's differing circumstances and how it affects their behavior, I feel like this book should be something that everyone reads so that they create this sense of empathy for their fellow man. But I think that there is something really phenomenal about this book in its variety, in its diversity, in its distinguishing characters, and in the way that it just formulates these really, really beautiful, beautiful stories and connections. So, yes, definitely. Next one. I did not think I was going to love this book as much as I ended up loving it. This is Pew by Katherine Lacey. Katherine Lacey, I don't know how she thought of this concept for this book, but it's just truly phenomenal. I'll read the blurb, but the blurb has really little in the way of how great this book is. One Sunday morning, a mysterious person is found sleeping in the church. The townsfolk call this person Pew and seek to uncover who they are, their gender, race, age, and intentions. Are they an orphan, and why won't they speak? Unable to agree on how to treat someone that they cannot categorize, whether to adopt or imprison, help or harm, the community is quickly undone by Pew's terrifying silence. This book touches on a number of things. It touches on humanity's need to be dichotomous, or humanity's need to label and classify and scientifically define things in order to rationalize it and in order to be comfortable with it. I think there is a profound work in here that is so much more than just a psychological look at humanity. Pew, the character who is uncharacterized or uncharacterable, I'm going to create that word, uncharacterable, is can be formulated as a number of different things. They can be formulated as a person. They can be formulated as a religion. They can be formulated as a political stance. They could be formulated as a metaphor for writing. They could be formulated in so many different ways, but in such a small space. Lacey develops this idea of how uncomfortable we are with something that we cannot understand and cannot rationalize, and how the fear of that drives us to do really, really stupid things. And I think it's a great introspection novel. I think it's a really, really fascinating read. As a piece of literature, it is written so beautifully. The pace is really, really good with it. And it does create a really wonderful sort of immersive experience. It's got that sort of Margaret Atwood lack of punctuation, which I think is really interesting in a novel, and it kind of just dives right in. I think it takes place over the course of a week, and you get to explore the different characters and what they and how they interact with this bizarre person, if it is a person, that comes into their space. So I think this book is really, really wonderful for reading and creating a jumping off point in introspection. Now, I'm definitely influenced by Kieran with this, but it's actually probably one of the few times him and I actually agree on a book recommendation. He called out Hilary Mantel's Wolf Hall, and I am going to do the same thing. Wolf Hall is a fictional work, but highlights the life of Thomas Cromwell, who was Henry VIII's right-hand man. It's in a 3-part series, the Wolf Hall trilogy, and I've read all 3. I've loved all 3, but Wolf Hall, which is the first one, is by far the most incredible. Now, it's written a bit odd. I think it takes some time to get used to the language and the way that Mantel actually narrates Cromwell and his thoughts and his introspection. But what I want to call out here is that Wolf Hall is the gold standard, not even the gold standard, it is the cosmic universal standard of what historical fiction should be. There is no other historical fiction writer, in my opinion, who does what Mantel does. In her research, her detail, she is incredible. She is so meticulous in creating a setting that is not only accurate, but very, very atmospheric and very engaging and very educational. If you don't know much about the Tudor era, I would highly recommend reading up on it before you dive into this. Obviously, there are a lot of players in the space, and Cromwell is just one of them. But it is incredibly interesting to see this as a piece of writing, an example of writing, where there is such a profound sense of detail, engagement, and the way that she builds Cromwell's person, his relationships, his family, his history that very little is known about, and she just builds that out into a fiction that fits seamlessly into the current history and what we know of the Tudors and of Cromwell. And I just think that this book is unmatched in terms of historical fiction. Finally, one of my favorites is A Ghost in the Throat. Again, I've spoken about this book so many times on this channel. I will continue to recommend this book to so many people because of how incredible it is to read. The impact that this book has had on me when I first read it, I don't think I have found a book that is equitable to this in any way, shape, and form. So if you do have a book that you think is similar to this, I would love to hear your thoughts in the comments down below. But A Ghost in the Throat is essentially an amalgamation between memoir, history, and fiction. It is about the writer's experience as she was becoming a mother and her relationship that she has to a 18th century female poet in Ireland. The blurb on the back basically says that this sculpts essay and autofiction to explore the deep connection between two writers centuries apart. In the 1700s, an Irish noblewoman, on discovering that her husband has been murdered, drinks handfuls of his blood and composes an extraordinary poem. In the present day, a young mother narrowly avoids tragedy. On encountering the poem, she becomes obsessed with its echoes in her life and sets out to track down the rest of the poet's story. I think this interplay between the trajectories of two women writers centuries apart is a really, really interesting innovation in this book. I think the way that female writing and female history has come through the world is through the bodies of women passing down from mother to child. And I think this book explores that particularly well. And as a reader who is particularly interested in female writing and the impacts of female authorship, I think this book is really, really phenomenal in that way. So if you are a fan of Austen or you are a fan of any of the Victorian female writers, then this is definitely a book to pick up. Not because the style is similar and not because the content is similar, but because the impact and the feeling of this book is similar to that feeling you will get when reading those authors. I think that there is a great originality to this book and that there is a great amount of personalization that went into writing this book that really sets it apart from some of the other fictional works that I have here. But I don't think that that's a bad thing necessarily. They do say you should write what you know, and I think this author has definitely written what she knows. But there is something really special about this book that I can't quite put my finger on. And for those that have read it and have commented in my videos in the past, please let me know what that is, because I'm trying to articulate it now and I find that I'm actually struggling to identify what makes this book so magical. And yet every single person that I've recommended this book to who has read it has loved it. And so do let me know in the comments down below. I really like this tag. I think I'm going to tag a couple more people in the description box down below to see what 5 books you have read that will change your life. A quick, short and sweet video. I hope that you have enjoyed this video, and if you find yourself coming back to my channel, watching my videos frequently, please go ahead and like and subscribe and comment. All of these things will just help me out just so much, and I really appreciate all the love and support that you guys provide on my channel. So thank you for being here. Thank you for spending some time with me, and I'll see you all in the next one. Bye.